Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
Karen, we begin with politics and a major speech from President Biden. 3 days after he ended his re-election campaign, the president gave an 11-minute address from the Oval Office to explain his decision.
In recent weeks, it's become clear to me that I need to unite my party in this critical endeavor. I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy.
President Biden says he reveres the office, but ultimately he needed to bring his party together and put aside personal ambition. But the president says he still has a lot to accomplish over the rest of his term.
I'm going to call for Supreme Court reform because this is critical to our democracy, Supreme Court reform.
President Biden also said he will keep working to lower health care costs, combat climate change and gun violence, and bring the war in Gaza to an end. And he praised the Democrats' new presumptive nominee, Kamala Harris, as a, quote, incredible partner to me and a leader for our country.
Well, Nathan, we have plenty of reaction to President Biden's primetime address. Bloomberg political contributor Jeannie Sheehan-Zaino says it's evident that Biden does not bring the energy Harris does to the Democrats.
We've been listening for the last 72 hours to Harris on the campaign trail with these huge, just big rallies where she's getting a lot of energy and it's very sort of moving. And then you contrast that with Joe Biden and you're reminded why so many Democrats felt that he wasn't up to the task.
Bloomberg political contributor Jeannie Sheehan-Zaino believes Biden will help Democrats in some down-ballot races, but will take a backseat role on the campaign trail.
Karen, Harris is about to receive some big-name political support. According to NBC News, former President Barack Obama plans to endorse Harris soon. The report says the two have been in close touch since Harris announced her candidacy on Sunday, and Obama has given Harris his full support privately.
Well, Nathan, hours before President Biden's speech, former President Donald Trump went after his new opponent at a campaign rally in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Now we have a new victim to defeat, Lion Kamala Harris, Lion, L-Y-I-N apostrophe. The most incompetent and far-left vice president in American history.
The former president called Harris the, quote, border czar, and he attacked her record as a prosecutor, saying she's soft on crime. Trump also said his position on abortion is 8 points higher in the polls than Harris's, though he didn't say where he got that number. Democrats are seizing on reproductive rights as a key issue in the campaign.
Well, Karen, both campaigns are going to be meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu. The Israeli prime minister will meet with Biden and Harris today at the White House and with Trump in Florida tomorrow. In an hour-long speech to Congress yesterday, Netanyahu tried to shore up U.S. support for Israel's war with Hamas. And Bloomberg's Amy Morris reports from Washington.
Netanyahu said Iran regards Israel as an arm of its primary enemy, the United States.
Our enemies are your enemies. Our fight is your fight, and our victory will be your victory.
Netanyahu also said that he envisions a new alliance throughout the Middle East, including any countries at peace with Israel.
The new alliance I envision would be a natural extension of the groundbreaking Abraham Accords. Those accords saw peace forged between Israel and 4 Arab countries, and they were supported by Republicans and Democrats alike. I think we should call it the Abraham Alliance.
Netanyahu also assailed anti-Israel protesters for siding with Hamas. In Washington, Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Amy, thank you. Well, as Netanyahu spoke, police deployed tear gas and took demonstrators into custody as thousands converged on Washington to condemn Netanyahu's visit. Outside D.C.'s Union Station, protesters removed American flags and hoisted Palestinian ones in their place.
Turning to the markets now, Karen, the Wall Street-led AI sell-off has gone global. Stocks in Japan fell more than 3%, while shares in Europe are down more than 1%. For more, we're joined by Bloomberg's John Tucker. John?
Nathan, AI fever appears to be cooling. Yesterday saw a $1 trillion rout in the NASDAQ 100. The sell-off triggered by a middle-of-the-road earnings report from Alphabet. That stock sank more than 5%. Investors getting impatient. They want to see returns on the investments in artificial intelligence. Still, Shelby McFadden at Motley Fool Asset Management suggests the drop could argue in favor of dip buying.
And I think that we're just a little bit too early in earnings season, even in tech earnings, for the sort of mass of investors to say, you know what, we're done here.
A massive rotation from the tech winners into smaller companies appears to be holding the Russell 2000 up 0.5% this week. Well, the next big cue for investors may come with the next round of tech results. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta platforms are all due to report results next week. John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, John, thanks. Well, several stocks are on the move this morning. Shares of IBM are up 4%. The company reported a jump in bookings for its artificial intelligence business as customers work to implement the latest technology.
And shares of Chipotle are up nearly 4%, Karen. The burrito chain reported earnings and comparable sales that topped analyst estimates.
Shares of Ford are down more than 13%. The automaker's second quarter profit fell short of estimates. Ford said vehicle quality problems led to a surge in warranty costs.
That's not the only automaking giant going in reverse, Karen. Shares of Stellantis are down nearly 6%. The maker of Jeep, Ram, Dodge, and Chrysler says it's considering price cuts to cope with a massive sales drop in the first half of the year.
And Nathan, it is not sweet music this morning for investors of the world's biggest record label. Shares of Universal Music Group, which represents artists including Taylor Swift and Drake, are plunging about 26%. Universal subscription and streaming revenue numbers missed estimates. Time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. For that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. A police officer was shot several times in Rahway, New Jersey. Eyewitnesses say the shooting took place near Broad Street and West Hazelwood Avenue last night. According to the mayor of Rahway, officers were executing a search warrant when two suspects tried to run from the scene. One of the suspects fired a gun at the officers. According to the New Jersey State Policemen's Benevolent Association, the officer was taken to Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital in New Brunswick. The PBA asked people to please keep him and all the officers involved in the Rahway incident in their prayers. There's new information in the FBI probe into the attempt on the life of former President Donald Trump. The details were discovered at a hearing of the House Judiciary Committee. The FBI says that the same day that he registered to attend the Trump rally, the would-be assassin, Thomas Crooks, Googled the distance from which Lee Harvey Oswald fired at John F. Kennedy. And on that same day, a week before the shooting, Crooks spent about 20 minutes at the Butler, PA event site. FBI Director Christopher Wray also says it appears as if the drone was up in the air for about 11 minutes, roughly 200 yards away from the venue.
Around 3:50 p.m., 4 o'clock in that window on the day of the shooting, that the shooter was flying the drone around the area.
The number of COVID cases is spiking across the country. CDC says almost 40 states are reporting high COVID activity levels. Emergency room visits are at their highest for coronavirus since February. Editor-at-large at KFF Health News, Dr. Celine Gounder, says more people are getting sick because they are traveling more.
COVID is still one of the worst viral respiratory infections, and infants and kids may have little to no immunity to COVID. They also have smaller airways, so when they get a viral respiratory infection, which causes airway inflammation and mucus plugging, they're more likely to get into trouble.
Dr. Celine Gounder spoke to CBS. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg, Karen.
All right, Michael Barr, thank you. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashower. John, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. Last 2 months, the Mets have been a far better team than the Yankees, and it came through in the 4 Subway Series games last month at Citi Field. Mets scored 21 runs in 2 games. They won a 3-2 nail-biter Tuesday in the Bronx and then erupted for a dozen more runs last night, once again using the long ball.
First pitch, swinging a high fly ball, well hit, left center. This one might go. Judge is back, and it is gone beyond the Mets bullpen in left center field. A long home run by Francisco Lindor. His second home run of the game, his 21st of the year, a 3-run homer.
WCBS, Lindor's second was the Mets' fifth homer. They won 12-3 at the end of May. Mets were 24-33. Since then, they've gone 29-15. Also, June 1st, Yankees were flying high at 40-19, under 500 since. Since June 12th, the Yankee record is 11-22. They're only a game and a half behind Baltimore. The Orioles have been slumping, lost in Miami 6-3. Red Sox lost at Colorado 20-7. Rockies tied a club record for most runs in a game. Padres had 20 hits and a 12-3 rout of the Nationals. The Giants, with a 6-run, 8th inning, salvaged one for the Dodgers, 8-3. The Knicks have rewarded Coach Tom Thibodeau with a 3-year extension. He's now signed through 2028. He's gotten them to the playoffs in 3 of his 4 seasons. The legal battle apparently on between the NBA and TNT, who claims it had the right to match the deal the NBA signed with Amazon. Kevin Durant missed the 5 tune-up games for the U.S. Olympic basketball team due to a calf injury. He hopes to play Sunday against Serbia. The opening ceremonies in Paris are tomorrow, and the 2 U.S. flag bearers voted on by the athletes, LeBron James and Coco Gauff, who at 20 will be the youngest to do it. IOC announced the 2034 Winter Games will be in Salt Lake City. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Karen and Nathan.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on SiriusXM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
President Biden says he is putting aside personal ambition in a bid to save democracy.
I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. That's the best way to unite our nation.
The president used a primetime Oval Office address to explain his decision to end his reelection bid and what he hopes to get done for the rest of his term. For more, we are joined by Tina Fordham, founder and geopolitical strategist at Fordham Global Insight. Tina, good morning. Your reaction to the president's speech?
It's the end of an era. Joe Biden has served the country for many decades, and he's passed the torch. Some would say he took his time about it, but I think we have seen very clearly in the momentum behind Kamala Harris that there's a huge appetite for energy and for new voices in this race.
Does that momentum last? Do you think? There's only 4 months till the election.
Well, and this is where being based in Europe is maybe a valuable perspective. You say only 4 months. We've just had 2 snap elections in just a few weeks' time called in both the UK and France. I wonder if a more compressed time frame doesn't actually help Harris.
What does a compressed time frame mean for President Biden? He put out a pretty significant laundry list of things he would still like to accomplish over the next 6 months of his term, including Supreme Court reform.
Absolutely. Well, it's definitely a wish list. That's the right thing to call it, because, of course, Congress is going into recess shortly. And historically, not a lot of legislation gets passed in the period before a U.S. election. So it makes sense that Biden will want to focus on his legacy, on leaving some kind of a stamp. But the pace of the legislative process and the focus on this election, which is extraordinary no matter how you slice it, means that he probably won't be able to pull off quite as much as he would like.
We're going to see the first glimpse of what the rest of a Biden term is going to look like later on today when the president and vice president meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after his pretty fiery defense of the war in Gaza. What are you expecting from that encounter today?
Well, there isn't a lot of love lost between Biden and Netanyahu. And, arguably the White House's full-throated support for Israel following October 7th has generated pretty significant negative blowback for the Biden administration. I also think the timing of Netanyahu's visit was somewhat unfortunate in that, we've now pivoted to this very intense preoccupation with what happens next in U.S. elections. I don't think that Biden will waver in his commitment to supporting Israel, but the dynamics have changed so dramatically. From Harris, it would be wise for her to keep her powder dry, I think, and kind of let Biden own this relationship for now, while saying the kind of requisite things about commitment to Israel as an ally and a partner.
I'm curious as well in our last minute to get your take on the pivot that we're seeing from former President Trump as he focuses now on his new opponent, Vice President Harris, calling her Lion, Kamala, border czar, even talking about his position on abortion polling higher than hers. What do you make of the message from the president?
I think it will come back to bite him. This is what I would say. And as someone who's been working in financial markets for 25 years and, follows the discourse, I also think that investors have focused so much on the positives of a possible second Trump administration that they may not remember that things like reproductive rights matter to a lot of Americans, not just women and not just Democrats. And so I'm not sure that Trump's strategy with his, incredible nicknames, which have been so effective in marginalizing and even humiliating opponents, are going to dampen the energy that we're seeing from Harris right now, and they might backfire. I worry this gets very ugly in terms of the campaign rhetoric very fast.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Today, your morning brief on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed at 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, SiriusXM, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.